My name is Morgan, 32 years old, and that evening I stood at the back of the grand hall of the Westwood Hotel, where my sister's contract celebration was taking place. Golden lights poured over rows of white-clothed tables, crystal glasses clinked and laughter echoed. Everyone came to praise the star of the night, my sister Vanessa, not to notice me. I chose a simple navy dress, neat and understated so I could blend into the crowd. But I didn't need to hide. They already treated me as invisible. My parents stood near the front, smiling proudly at every compliment aimed at Vanessa. Me. I was just a shadow standing quietly behind them holding a glass of cold water. My sister's husband, Dylan, always loved to show off. He stood in the center of the room as if he truly owned it. His silver-gray suit gleamed, his slicked-back hair shone, and that arrogant smile never left his face. When he picked up the microphone, he tapped his glass, the sharp ring cutting the noise until the room fell silent. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, pacing like a politician, "tonight, we honor the woman who brought this company to the top. The visionary, the leader, the only one worthy of this spotlight. My wife, Vanessa." Applause exploded, cameras flashed nonstop. I clapped politely, but my heart tightened. Not once did Dylan mention me, even though I was the one who had worked for years behind the curtain. Dylan's voice boomed on. "We started from nothing, from an old garage. And now we've signed a contract worth over $600 million. But of course, not everyone in the family had the strength to get here." Laughter rippled through the hall. A few guests turned toward me with looks that mixed pity and disdain. Dylan raised his glass higher, gloating. "Some people," he said, suddenly pointing straight at me, "are only suited for serving tables. Morgan, could you help bring out another tray of appetizers? They're a bit short-staffed." The air froze for a beat. Every eye landed on me. I said nothing, gripping the icy glass so tightly my fingers went numb. Dylan's grin widened as he added quickly, "Just kidding." The laughter burst out again, loud and relieved, laughter at my expense. Cameras snapped, phones lifted high. Vanessa stood beside him, her lips curled into a smirk. She didn't protest, didn't even bother to pretend to defend me. I glanced at my parents. My mother looked down at the floor as if she'd lost something there. My father tilted his head up at the ceiling, pretending not to see my humiliation. Not a single word was spoken in my defense. The hall rang with carefree laughter while I stood frozen, my heart pounding violently against my ribs. Heat burned up my throat, but I refused to let tears fall. Slowly I set my glass down, then walked straight through the stares and the sneers. My heels struck the marble floor sharply, slicing through the music and the laughter behind me. No one stopped me. No one called my name. Only whispers followed, "Useless." The company would have succeeded without her. I strode toward the tall glass doors, breath uneven, palms damp with sweat. I said nothing, but in my head memories came flooding back. Nights hunched over a computer, designs sketched hurriedly on a whiteboard, code written until my fingertips cracked, all buried now beneath a cruel joke. I stopped right in front of the glass doors, my breath still heavy. The bursts of laughter, the clinking glasses, and Dylan's voice echoed behind me like needles piercing into my skin. But in that moment I realized I still had a weapon no one here knew about. A weapon strong enough to end this phony celebration with just one sentence. My small purse vibrated lightly. I pulled out my phone, its screen glowing under the golden light. At the top of my contacts was Jonathan, my personal lawyer, the only one I trusted. He had reminded me countless times, "Morgan, you hold the authority to sign and terminate major contracts. Remember, no one but you has the final seal." My fingertips hovered over the screen, and a strange calmness swept over me, cold and steady. I turned back toward the center of the hall, walking slowly. My heels clicked sharply against the marble floor, drawing curious stares. The chatter quieted as people realized I wasn't leaving but coming back. Dylan sneered, thinking I was about to embarrass myself further. Vanessa tilted her head, watching me with lazy amusement as if I were part of some dull performance. I stopped near the podium, the spotlight catching my face. Without a microphone, my voice still carried across the hall. "Excuse me, I need to make a call." Under hundreds of eyes, I dialed and lifted the phone to my ear. "Jonathan, cancel the contract with Ridgeway. Effective immediately." My tone was steady. No shaking, no hesitation. The room froze. Dylan's eyes bulged, his face flushing crimson. Vanessa blinked, her wineglass trembling as a few drops spilled over the rim. Guests whispered urgently, "Did she just say cancel a $600 million contract?" The atmosphere grew so heavy even the background music sounded out of place. At the far end, one of the Ridgeway executives lowered his glass mid-toast. He quickly pulled out his phone, whispering to a colleague. The reporters invited to cover the celebration swung their cameras toward me. Dylan tried to laugh, but his voice cracked. "Morgan, what are you doing? This is a party, not a stage for your drama." His forced grin couldn't mask the panic in his eyes. I looked straight at him, then turned to Vanessa. "Did you really think I was just a shadow? Every number, every contract you bragged about tonight, it all required my approval. And I just erased it from your hands." The laughter from earlier had vanished. Uneasy silence spread, punctured only by murmurs of disbelief. A man in a dark suit rushed out of the hall, no doubt to confirm my words. Vanessa stepped down from the podium, her stiff smile barely holding. "Morgan, what kind of joke is this? You want to destroy everything our family built?" Her voice quivered despite her attempt to stay proud. I replied evenly, "Family? When I was humiliated, our parents stayed silent. When I was mocked, you smirked. Don't talk to me about family. I'm not destroying anything, I'm taking back what was mine." My father finally stepped forward, pale as chalk. "Morgan, you can't do this. This project is our lifeline." I gave him a cold smile. I didn't act recklessly. I'm the one with signing authority. Or did you forget who actually holds the final legal stamp? Whispers spread like wildfire across the room, sharp as knives cutting into Vanessa and Dylan. One guest gasped, "My God, she's the one with real control." "So all this time?" Dylan stormed down, fists clenched, teeth grinding. "You'll regret this, Morgan." I tilted my head slightly, letting him rage without a word. Then my phone rang. I switched it to speaker. Jonathan's voice filled the hushed hall. "Morgan, the contract has been officially cancelled. All distribution and funding clauses are terminated." His words slashed through the glittering event like a blade. Glasses slipped, shattering on the tile floor. Vanessa went pale, frozen in shock. Dylan's mouth hung open, no insult left to throw. My parents stood stiff as statues, unable to comprehend that the daughter they dismissed had just undone everything with a single phone call. I lowered the phone into my purse. "I think this party is over." My voice was quiet but carried through the stunned silence. Without another glance, I turned and walked away, leaving behind chaos and disbelief. That night, I drove alone through empty streets. Neon lights reflected across my windshield. I didn't feel relieved, not exactly happy either. Instead, a new weight settled in, a sense that this was only the beginning. I left Westwood Hall that night and sat in my car, my hands gripping the steering wheel until they went numb. The noise and chatter from behind still echoed in my head, but mixed with it came a flood of memories. Memories of the early days when there were no spotlights, no golden banners with Vanessa's name printed in bold, only an old garage in the suburbs of Dallas and me, a 21-year-old girl who had no idea she was about to be turned into a shadow. That garage was suffocating, the smell of sweat blending with the heat from soldered circuit boards. I sat for hours in front of a battered computer, writing line after line of code until my wrists stiffened and my eyes blurred. On sweltering summer nights, I set up 3 small fans around me, yet the heat still glued my shirt to my back. But I didn't feel tired because I believed in what I was creating. A data optimization system that could change the way small businesses operated. Vanessa showed up past midnight, her wavy hair still carrying the scent of champagne from some party. She glanced around, raised an eyebrow and said, "Morgan, you're really still here? You're insane." Minutes later, she pulled out her phone, snapped a few pictures of me at the screen, then casually remarked, "Don't worry, I'll help you turn this mess into a story investors will actually buy." Back then, I thought she cared, that maybe at least one person in the family wanted to stand by me. I was naive. The following mornings, while I wrestled with algorithms, Vanessa was already meeting familiar faces from her networking circles. She spoke of vision, mission, the future of American tech, as if she had drawn the plans herself. Meanwhile, my hands were blistered from holding a soldering iron, my eyes bloodshot from sleepless nights, unknown to everyone. When our first demo finally worked, I shook with joy. I remember calling our parents to show them. My father glanced at the screen, then turned to Vanessa. You're amazing, turning your sister's little hobby into a real product. My mother beamed, hugging Vanessa. You truly are the pride of this family. Me. I stood silently, my smile stiff, my throat too tight to speak. From that day on, in every family conversation, every gathering, the name praised was always Vanessa. Vanessa is so successful. Vanessa really has leadership qualities. And I was labeled, the quiet daughter, selfless, who doesn't need attention. Those words, at first sounding kind, were nothing more than excuses to justify erasing me from the light. I still remember when we were first invited to San Francisco to pitch before a major group of investors. I had spent 3 weeks preparing, fine-tuning every slide and chart. But when the boardroom screen lit up, the words read, Vanessa Carter, founder CEO. I froze, staring. Vanessa leaned over and whispered, You hate public speaking, let me handle this. We're a team. A team? I sat there in silence, watching her passionately deliver the ideas I had stayed awake countless nights to create. Applause filled the room and every admiring gaze landed on Vanessa. Afterward, one investor shook my hand politely and asked, Are you Vanessa's assistant? I swallowed hard, nodded faintly. Vanessa stood right beside me, smiling brightly without a word of correction. From that day my role was sealed. The helper, the shadow, the silent machine. Vanessa, the bold young entrepreneur, became the face on magazine covers, the name my parents bragged about at every family dinner. Never once did they ask if I wanted recognition. Years later, as the company grew, I worked myself past exhaustion. Vanessa busied herself with photo shoots for PR campaigns, attending glittering parties. She wore designer gowns, flashing her perfect smile for cameras, while I sat in a freezing server room, patching system bugs that could have crashed entire projects. Layer after layer of my work was erased, replaced by Vanessa's glamorous image. My family, instead of seeing me, saw only the star they paraded around. They said, Morgan is stable, she doesn't need the spotlight. Let Vanessa shine. It sounded like praise, but in truth it was a life sentence that caged me through my youth. Sitting in my car tonight, those memories surged back like a storm. I had let them steal my light for too long. But things were different now. I had just canceled a contract that Vanessa and Dylan thought was the pinnacle of their careers. Soon they would understand that the shadow they mocked was actually the hand holding the company's fate. I leaned back against the seat, closed my eyes, and let the images of the past fade slowly into the night. After the night I canceled the contract at Westwood Hall, rumors began to swirl. Business papers screamed headlines about a once-in-a-generation deal, suddenly derailed by a single phone call from someone they had barely heard of. In the media, Vanessa denied everything, painting me as jealous, unstable, and destructive. Dylan appeared on local TV with a fake smile. Every family has small disagreements. But I knew that was only the surface. The hidden part was far more dangerous. One morning I tried swiping my badge to enter the office building where I had worked for years. Red light. I tried again, still red. The security guard looked uneasy. I'm sorry, Morgan, your name isn't on the access list anymore. I froze, called upstairs, but no one answered. Hours later, a cold email landed in my inbox. Restructuring notice. Your advisory role has been terminated. No thank you, no explanation. Back at my apartment, I opened my laptop and checked the legal files I had saved. My heart sank when I saw my name erased from key documents. Even the patent for the data system I had poured myself into now bore the names Vanessa and my father, Richard. I read it over and over, my vision blurring, refusing to believe. Memories rushed back. When I was 26, fresh out of surgery, my father handed me papers. Just a small formality, he said. In case something happens, your work won't be interrupted. I'll keep it safe. I trusted him, barely glanced, and signed while still lying in a hospital bed. That was the very power of attorney they had used to steal everything from me. The more I dug, the clearer the betrayal. Vanessa had quietly hired a PR team to spread stories that I was emotionally unstable and unfit to lead. On LinkedIn, I saw cruel comments spreading. Morgan was never really part of the project. My hands shook with fury, but I realized the scheme was meticulous. They wanted to erase me not only from the company but from public memory itself. A week later, I received a misdelivered envelope. Company logo printed on the front. Inside a board memo. In Vanessa's handwriting, Morgan is unstable. We need to push her out completely before the press digs deeper. Dad has signed everything. Nothing to worry about. My knees buckled as I sat down, hands trembling around the paper. My father, the man who once encouraged me to study tech, who promised he'd always have my back, was the very one who signed off on stabbing me there. I didn't cry. My tears had long dried. What rose instead was a cold, corrosive rage, quiet but relentless. I understood now. I hadn't just been cut out of the company. I had been cut out of the family. In the days that followed, I spent hours in my apartment digging through old hard drives, emails, drafts. I unearthed recordings, photos of whiteboards crammed with my formulas, lines of code stamped with my dates and electronic signature. I knew only truth could save me, and I was the only one left holding it. In a moment of silence, I remembered a family meeting years ago. I had just presented an upgrade idea. My father chuckled. "Morgan, you always make things too serious. Let Vanessa handle the partners. You just focus on the backstage." I swallowed my protest, keeping the peace. That silence was exactly what they had used to exploit me, turning me into a tool, then discarding me. Now there was no space left for silence. I looked in the mirror, my face hollow but my eyes blazing. They had stolen my name, but I would take it back. Even if it meant standing against my own blood, I would not step back. I folded the letter and slipped it into a thick file. This was only the beginning. A brutal legal and media battle was waiting ahead. A week after discovering my patent had been stolen, I hardly left my apartment. Every night I sat for hours in front of the screen, eyes burning red as I sifted through endless files. Thousands of emails, forgotten lines of code, jumbled recordings from an old phone. I searched for any trace that could prove I was the true creator of the company's foundation. But the deeper I dug, the clearer it became. I couldn't do this alone. I needed someone out there who still remembered the truth. The call came unexpectedly from Ezra, my former colleague, now in his 30s, a skilled software engineer who had once sat beside me in that garage. His voice cracked with tension even as he tried to laugh. "Morgan, I read about the contract cancellation. Sounds like you're in deep trouble." I sighed and answered, "Not trouble, Ezra. A war. And my family is erasing me day by day." We met at a small coffee shop on the edge of Austin. Ezra was already there, messy hair, clutching his old laptop. He looked at me with eyes that carried both regret and unease. "I still remember those nights debugging with you. Nothing ever worked without your fixes. But Vanessa," he hesitated. I pressed him. "Say it." Ezra lowered his voice. "The contract your company signed with Ridgeway contains falsified numbers. I know because I consult for them. The core algorithm Vanessa presented, it's the one you wrote years ago. They tweaked small parts, but the essence is unchanged. I traced it. The digital signature on the original code is yours." My chest tightened, half in pain, half in relief. Finally, someone confirmed it. My voice shook. "Ezra, helping me could cost you your job." He gave a crooked smile. "Morgan, you gave me my first chance. If I stay silent now, I'll spend the rest of my life betraying myself." That afternoon we combed through data together. Ezra showed me how to trace encrypted signatures, how to prove timestamps of file creation. Each piece of evidence on the screen felt like a puzzle piece snapping back into place. I, and no one else, was the true author. But Ezra and I alone weren't enough. I needed a witness, someone who had seen the truth warped from the inside. That's when I thought of Natalie, as everyone called her, my former assistant. She had been barely in her 20s, shy but meticulous, recording every meeting in detail. I called her one rainy night. At first she faltered. "Morgan, you know I've stayed quiet all these years." "I'm scared," I cut in. They didn't just take everything from me. They dismissed you too. Remember how they pushed you aside with one cold email? Do you want to live your whole life in fear? Or stand up just once?" There was a long silence. Then a sigh. "You're right." Kept some notes. And an audio file from that meeting where Vanessa said she would cut you out after funding. I didn't believe my ears, so I saved it. But I've been too afraid to share. I clenched my fist, whispering, You won't be alone this time. We'll do it together." 2 days later, met me at the city library. She handed me a small silver USB. "It's all here," she said softly. Internal memos, photos of your whiteboards, and that audio file. I always copied notes for Vanessa, but I kept the originals. I knew one day you'd need them. My hands trembled as I opened the file. Vanessa's voice rang out, cold and clear. Morgan is only good for background. Once we secure the funding, she's out. This company needs a fresh face, not someone obsessed with numbers. The words cut like blades through my memory, but they were also the strongest proof of the conspiracy. I looked at Na, my throat tight but steady. Thank you. You don't know how much this means. She smiled faintly, eyes glistening. I just want justice where it belongs. That night I sat before my laptop, compiling everything into a case file. Emails, code, recordings, notes, each one labeled, numbered, stored. For the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. I had Ezra. I had Na. And most importantly, I had the truth. I whispered to myself, Vanessa can control the media, manipulate our father, twist public opinion. But the truth can't be buried forever. And I knew it was time to bring everything into the light. I spent 3 straight nights assembling every piece of evidence. My small apartment overflowed with papers, laptops glowing with 4 screens at once, each displaying part of the data. Emails, code, audio files. Ezra supported me through calls that stretched until dawn, while Na sent handwritten notes in her tiny, meticulous script. Piece by piece, the fragments formed a solid case file. I knew I couldn't wait any longer. Vanessa was too skilled at manipulating the media. One fabricated article could turn black into white. If I didn't act first, everything might be buried forever. On Monday morning, I put on a plain gray blazer, tied my hair back, and carried a nearly 200-page dossier. I walked into the Houston headquarters of Stratwin Capital, the biggest investor funding Vanessa's company. The vast glass-walled lobby reflected my face, a mixture of exhaustion and steel. When the receptionist asked my purpose, I simply said, I have documents related to fraud in the Ridgeway contract. I need to see legal immediately. Whether it was curiosity or the firmness in my tone, they called right away. Within 10 minutes, I was ushered into a small conference room. 3 attorneys sat waiting, eyes wary. I placed the file on the table and slid it toward them. This is all the evidence proving I authored the system Carter Tech used to secure the deal. My name was illegally erased using an old power of attorney, and the contract itself is based on falsified data. One of the lawyers, a brunette woman in her 40s, flipped through pages and paused on the original emails bearing my digital signature. Her expression shifted. I opened my laptop and played an audio clip. Vanessa's voice, sharp and cold. Morgan is only good for background. Once we get funding, she has no place here. The words sliced through the silence, thickening the air. After a quick review, they didn't say much, just nodded. We'll forward this to the fund managers immediately. If accurate, disbursements will be frozen. I knew I had lit the fuse. 2 days later, the explosion came. Stratwin Capital issued an urgent statement. All funding to Carter Tech is frozen pending verification of patent ownership and the Ridgeway contract. News spread like wildfire. Financial papers blared headlines. Erased co-founder alleges $600 million fraud. I sat in a small cafe as the TV on the wall ran breaking news. Vanessa's face appeared, pale, cornered by reporters. Dylan tried to smile beside her, but the cameras caught his trembling hands. Reporters shouted, Carter, your sister says she's the true author. What's your response? Vanessa stammered, rumors. Just rumors. Online, the tide shifted in my favor. A video clip of me canceling the contract at Westwood Hall spread like wildfire. People wrote, this is the one who actually holds the power. Thousands of supportive comments poured in. Women messaged me privately, you spoke for all of us who've been pushed aside. Even some former Carter Tech employees went public. We worked directly with Morgan. She designed the system, not Vanessa. Their testimonies poured gasoline on the fire, sending Vanessa's reputation into free fall. Dylan scrambled to fight back, launching a smear campaign, painting me as mentally unstable, claiming I abandoned projects. But the more they pushed, the more people turned. A major New York paper bluntly published, smear tactic or cover-up? That night, Ezra called, excitement in his voice. Morgan, you did it. Stratwin just circulated an internal email. Every fund release is frozen, and the board has launched a deep investigation. Vanessa can't deny this anymore. I leaned back in my chair, closed my eyes, and for the first time in years, I felt my chest lighten as if a boulder had been lifted. But I also knew it wasn't the end. Vanessa wouldn't surrender easily. She would claw, twist, and fight back. Yet this time I wasn't alone. I had the truth, I had allies, and more importantly, I had thousands of people out there watching, waiting for justice. My phone rang nonstop for 3 days after Stratwin froze the funding. Texts, emails, even handwritten letters at my door. All of them from one side, the Carter family. That evening, as I poured myself a cup of tea, the screen lit up. It was my mother, Linda. Her voice trembled. "Morgan, just hear me out once. Don't push this too far. Vanessa was wrong, but she's still your sister. We can settle this privately as a family." I gripped the hot cup tighter, silent. She had never spoken to me in such a pleading tone. Then the truth slipped out. "You could withdraw the complaint, keep the company stable. Your father is falling apart. Don't let everything collapse." I answered firmly, "Mom, since when can justice be bargained in a living room? They stole my identity and you know it. And now all you care about is the company's peace." She sobbed, but I hung up before my heart weakened again. 2 days later, a thick envelope arrived at my temporary Houston office. Inside was a letter from Vanessa's attorney. The offer was clear: an out-of-court settlement. They'd pay $6.5 million along with a discreet note of thanks in internal records. In return, I had to withdraw all legal action, stop speaking to the press, and sign a non-disclosure. I read it twice, then laughed bitterly. $6.5 million might dazzle others, but to me it was an insult. They wanted to buy my silence to let Vanessa keep standing under the spotlight. That afternoon, I agreed to a meeting. It was held in a small hotel conference room near downtown Houston. Vanessa sat with her lawyer and my parents were there too. My father, Richard, looked older, his hair disheveled, but his eyes still refused to lower. The lawyer began, "Morgan, we'd like to resolve this peacefully. $6.5 million and a confidentiality clause, ready for your signature today." He slid the papers toward me, his tone flat like selling merchandise. I didn't even glance at the documents. I lifted my head and said slowly, "I don't want your money. I want 2 things. First, Vanessa must go public in front of the press and admit she erased me from the company, apologize with her own voice. Second, she withdraws completely from all contracts with Stratwin and Ridgway." Vanessa shot up, her face red. "Are you insane? You want to destroy my entire career?" I met her trembling eyes and replied calmly, "No, I just want the truth back. That career you cling to was built on my labor and my mind." My father slammed his hand on the table, his voice roaring, "Morgan, don't you understand? If you keep this up, this family loses everything. Do you want to see your parents disgraced?" I turned to him for the first time without fear. "This isn't me pushing the family here, Dad. You signed away my rights. You chose their side, not mine." The room fell silent. My mother wept, clutching at my hand. "Morgan, please. Doing this will only create more hatred." I gently pulled free, my voice steady but cold. "Mom, the hatred began the day my work was stolen. I've been silent too long." The lawyer glanced at Vanessa, sighed, and packed the documents. "In that case, we have nothing more to negotiate." I rose, pushed the chair back, and looked at each familiar yet distant face. "Good. I never intended to negotiate. The truth is, I came here only to tell you one thing. This time I won't stop." I turned and walked out. Behind me came Vanessa's choked cries and my father's shouts, but I didn't look back. The heavy door slammed shut, cutting the last tether between me and the Carter family. Outside, the Texas sun blazed bright. I drew a deep breath. For the first time in years, I no longer carried the weight of silence. In my hands wasn't $6.5 million. It was freedom and justice, and I would claim them at any cost. 1 month after the tense meeting at the Houston hotel, Stratwin Capital released its official statement. The short line appeared across every financial paper. "Morgan Carter is a co-founder and chief architect of the Carter Tech system. All legal documents have been verified." No flowery words, no excuses, just the bare truth. But to me it rang like a bell of justice after years of being buried. The day the statement came out, my phone never stopped buzzing. Congratulations poured in from former colleagues, from old friends I hadn't heard from in years, even from strangers. You made us believe that truth never disappears. Reading each message filled my chest with warmth, a stark contrast to the loneliness I had carried for so long. Vanessa, on the other hand, collapsed entirely. The press published photos of her leaving Carter Tech headquarters, her face gaunt, stripped of the glamorous makeup she once wore. Dylan, the boastful husband, kept silent, dodging cameras. Company stock plummeted, partners pulled out one after another. The glittering parties that once echoed with laughter became nothing but memories. My father, Richard, was dragged into the storm of criticism. Board memos with his signature, endorsing Vanessa's decisions, were exposed, shattering his image as the model patriarch in the business world. I heard he shut himself inside the house, refusing to see anyone. My mother, Linda, sent me a short letter. You've won. I hope you find peace. No matter what, you are still my daughter. I folded it carefully and put it in a drawer. I felt no anger, but I no longer sought understanding either. Instead, I focused on what truly mattered to me. With the settlement funds and the shares Stratwin forced Carter Tech to return, I founded the Phoenix Scholarship Fund, dedicated to young women pursuing technology who had been labeled too soft or unfit. I wanted them to have the opportunity one had once been denied. On the fund's opening day, I stood in a modest hall in Austin. No flashing cameras, no red carpets, just rows of simple chairs filled with eager students. I told my story plainly, without embellishment. I was once turned into a shadow in my own work. But shadows cannot erase the truth. Remember this: if someone says you don't belong, it's because they fear your light. Applause thundered. But this time I didn't feel like the forgotten figure at the back. I was leading with my own voice, my own worth. That evening I returned home, opened a drawer and took out 2 nameplates. One old, bent and scratched, Morgan, a project assistant, the one they had thrown aside. And one new, gleaming, Morgan Carter, co-founder chief architect. I set them side by side on my desk, staring for a long time. The old reminded me of pain, the new of resilience. I no longer craved recognition from my family. What I needed, I had reclaimed myself. The truth, my voice, and my own path. As I closed my eyes, I thought of the girls who would receive scholarships, of the late nights they'd spend coding, creating, just as I once did. But this time no one would erase their names from the stories they wrote. I smiled, whispering into the quiet, "At last I am free." Morgan's story reflects a painful but not uncommon reality. Some families, instead of lifting you up, strip away your work and silence your voice. Yet her journey proves that truth cannot stay buried forever. By standing tall, finding allies, and bringing evidence to light, Morgan reclaimed justice and opened a path for other women. In real life, the lesson is clear. Self-worth doesn't come from others' approval, but from the courage to never let anyone erase your name. What do you think about Morgan's fight to reclaim justice from her own family? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful and emotional family stories.